Everyone, and welcome to day 2 of New Jersey Business and Industry Association's inaugural Not-for-Profit Summit. Many of you already know me, but allow me to introduce myself to those of you who are new to NJBIA. My name is Michele Siekerka, and I'm the president and CEO of NJBIA, the largest business association actually in the country, representing over 1 million jobs across the state of New Jersey. And I'm very, very proud to be representing NJBIA and being here with you today. While I wasn't able to join you yesterday, I had the opportunity to go back and watch some of the recordings, and I saw and I heard the feedback from yesterday's participants was fantastic. I heard themes like energy and momentum and collaboration, but at the same time, I heard themes about reality, vulnerabilities, and anxiety, especially given the COVID world and the tough economic times that we are facing today. You know, this yin yang, it is exactly why we need opportunities and programs like this to connect, to share, to lift each other up, and to continue to do all the great work that you are all doing. You're all out there, boots on the ground, lifting up our communities each and every day. And the strength of this network is what's going to help us all to continue to persevere through. And that goes for both our profit and nonprofit participants. So I'm so excited to welcome you here today to continue the momentum that we started yesterday. I want to remind everyone, for the maximum benefit of the discussion, because we are in a Zoom world, I encourage you to change your screen view from gallery to speaker as the program goes along. And if you're not sure how to do that, the team will put some directions up in the chat. And a quick programming note, if you weren't able to connect yesterday, please check out the on-demand video where we were so proud to honor our inaugural Not-for-Profit Award winners, who were Carol Stillwell, Fulfill, Northfield Bank, PSE&G, Rising Tide Capital, and Virtua Health Systems. These are the folks just like you who are out in our communities tirelessly each and every day doing amazing work to make us all New Jersey proud. Congrats once again to all of our honorees. And now, before I continue the program, I of course have to give thanks to the organizations that have helped to make this program possible. And as you can see on the screen, this event was produced in partnership with the following organizations: NJM Insurance Group, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, Investors Bank, PSEG, Stillwell Hanson, the New Jersey Clean Energy Program, J&J, the Grunin Foundation, Comcast, DCM Associates Inc., Junior Achievement, Mercadian, Mercer Street Friends, New Jersey Resources, Northfield Bank, Insperity, Oxygen Benefits Consulting, Vistage, the Food Bank of South Jersey, Fulfill, the Society of Prevention of Teen Suicide, and Boyden Perlman. Please join me in thanking these incredible partners, because without them, we wouldn't have this opportunity today. And I would also be remiss if I didn't thank our fearless leaders, the Not-for-Profit Council Chair, Jody Grinwald of Zach G. Applaud Our Kids Foundation, and the Not-for-Profit Leadership Team, which includes the following people: Alex Cole from the ARC of Cape May County, Dawn Doherty from the Society of the Prevention of Teen Suicide, Jocelyn Gilman, our Northern New Jersey lead, Diana Zita from Hamilton Area YMCA, and Fred Wozniak of the Food Bank of South Jersey. Team, you are doing incredible work bringing our council together monthly, leading and establishing and helping to continue best practices all across our nonprofit community, and creating the relationships in partnership with our for-profit community. Thanks so much for what you're doing on behalf of NJBIA for all of our community leaders. So now it's time to present our Fireside Chat. I've so been looking forward to this. This interactive discussion is meant to provide an opportunity for all of you to ask questions in addition to the ones that I'll be presenting to our guests. Please place your questions in the chat and we'll do our best to get to as many as possible. I am so pleased to have the opportunity to share the next 40 minutes with a woman who is a tireless community leader, entrepreneur, and role model to so many. Born and raised in Ethiopia, Alfa Demellash is the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Rising Tide Capital, a nonprofit organization that provides underserved entrepreneurs with the resources they need to launch and grow successful businesses. Since 2005, the organization has operated the Community Business Academy, a 12-week course that provides intensive business management training coupled with year-round coaching and mentorship. Now serving a network of, get ready for this, more than 3,000 entrepreneurs in New Jersey, but also in Illinois, South Carolina, North Carolina, and many more in the planning stages. Alfa, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Good morning, Michele. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Now, let's start by giving our audience a chance to get to know you a little better. Please take a few moments to introduce yourself to all of us.
Sure. As you know, you mentioned, I started a nonprofit called Rising Tide Capital, along with my co-founder Alex Forrester, who's born and raised New Jersey, and that's the reason why I actually ended up in the state of New Jersey is because of him and his family's passion for the state. And that was many years ago. That was 16 years ago, and we found ourselves in a community in Jersey City, and really met inspiring people who are trying to change their community, their lives through businesses as well as through nonprofit work. And we were pretty inspired to start looking at what would meeting this energy, where it's at, what would putting our passion and purpose to work in that community might look like. And so we started in one zip code in Jersey City. We're still headquartered there. In fact, we just purchased a building at 311 Martin Luther King Boulevard in Jersey City. So we're extremely excited that this
Congratulations.
spring. Thank you. As anybody who in the nonprofit sector has tried to bring a building to life, it is a challenge. But yeah, we work with entrepreneurs. There's tremendous entrepreneurial energy in our communities in many cities and towns. And we believe it's that existing energy that's going to actually help us rebuild our economy and create the kinds of jobs that are needed in the future that will address, some of the socioeconomic and ecological challenges. And I'm extremely humbled and honored to be in leadership there with many of my colleagues who are also very passionate about this mission.
It is an incredible mission, and the work you do tirelessly each and every day. It is incredible the impact you're having on community. You recently graduated 130 graduates, and think about, you did that during COVID. How was that accomplished, and how might that group be different than others who preceded them?
Well, thank you for that. Yes, we graduated 121 entrepreneurs from 40 cities and towns just on actually January 21st. And we ourselves, we're not sure as we're, transforming our organization, our support services to digital, and knowing that more than 40% of businesses and entrepreneurs have had to shutter due to the pandemic. We weren't sure where our community was, where our entrepreneurs were, and whether this was a time that many were thinking about starting a business. And to our both surprise and also deep kind of inspiration, there have been so many who've responded. And in fact, these 121 entrepreneurs who went through the Community Business Academy in the midst of a pandemic, some of the most inspiring stories. We've had people who literally were taking the course while they were in the hospital digitally, where we've had people who had their families that were supporting them and walking with them, a 10-year-old boy who was bringing the homework and supporting his mom as she was going through COVID. Our staff, our team, our instructors themselves were suffering from incredible losses and grief, and yet continuing to show up saying, this is affirming my purpose and my sense of well-being in this time. And so it is an unprecedented class, as you said. This community of entrepreneurs will no doubt be celebrated and be part of what we look back on when we're looking for inspiration and gratitude. It's a testament to the immensity of resilience and the ways in which people really connect to their purpose and look for community in times like this one. So we're deeply grateful for them, and we'll be with them on their journey for the long haul.
That is incredible and fantastic. I mean, you heard me say at the top in the introduction that a lot of the themes that came out from yesterday were, anxiety and leading into vulnerability, and then how we build resilience. And so you saw that in some of the students. How do you, if we just stay on that topic for a moment, some tips to all of those joining us who are in this spot right now. You talk about the student who persevered, right? How do we do that? How do we continue to kind of get out of our own way, and how do we build ourselves up to lean into this challenging time to build our own resilience?
Absolutely. What I will share is that Rising Tide's mission is actually transforming lives and communities through entrepreneurship. And we really do believe on the lives part. So us as individuals being in relationship with one another, where we're able to have the safe space to have mutual visibility into each other's needs, And the ability to see each other as whole people is something that is integrated in everything we do at Rising Tide Capital. And that also means in how we relate to our partners, our community partners, the people who work with us to do outreach, the people who fund us. Our approach is really a person-first approach. So whenever we're encountering someone, it's how are they doing? What are their personal circumstances as they're walking in with, they're usually from a professional landscape. And so it's very much that personal relationship that's not based on any transactional ambition right from the get-go. It's really around how could we be in a mutual relationship of both respect and also visibility. So if I could see, Michele, kind of where you are as a person, what your challenges might be, what you're trying to achieve with the work that you're doing with your organization or what your team is trying to achieve, then I have a much greater sense of how I might be able to be, of value to you and what you're trying to do, and what things I might be able to ask of you where I might have needs and need for support and shoring up. And so that approach is how we take our work with our entrepreneurs, our community partners, our funders, anyone that we encounter. And I think that has been very helpful for us in meeting this moment, because when we started seeing the writing on the wall with the pandemic, we were very quick to anticipate that this is going to take a major hit on our resilience, on our family, on our how we work. And so we were pivoting to say, how do we center the mental well-being of all of our partners, including our team members, our entrepreneurs, and those we work and collaborate with. And that approach has meant leaving a lot of space, a lot of slack in the kinds of conversations we're having, being willing to re-examine our goals, and being able to look at the numbers and say the numbers are good and meeting those goals is good, but it's really about the long-term resilience. Our perspective has to be shaped not by short-term goals, but by the long-term resilience of what we want to achieve. And so I would say having those conversations with our partners, including our funding partners, to say, we were on track to try and get these things done, this many jobs created, this many businesses started, but I think we need to take a step back and make sure that our community is okay, that our team is okay, our partners are okay, and then we'll be able to re-examine and actually come up with metrics and goals that make sense from that place. And everyone across the board has responded with total openness and the ability to say, hey, we care about your long-term mission and vision as well. And so let's look at what goals could look like. So I would say, building that relationship on a person-first approach and being willing to re-examine everything in such a way that you are allowing for space for you to be able to recover, for your team to be able to recover and have bandwidth, because that emotional resilience, the role of anxiety, isolation, and a lot that has changed in the way we work has to be integrated into how we approach our work.
Oh, you couldn't have said it better. The whole thing of looking forward and being able to, the word pivot, if you will, has been used so much over the past year, but so true, flexibility and the leaning in. In 2020, many of us came into 2020 with a strategic plan. And we were all ready to execute. And then, right within first quarter, it was like, oh no, the world stopped. Yeah. And so, and we didn't know what to expect because it was such a dynamic time, right? Like everything was changing day to day and we needed to be much more tactical, and it was difficult to be strategic in that moment. But then as we came to the end and we looked long-term and said, COVID isn't going away, it's a part of our life. And we come into 2021 with a totally different lens, right? We have to come into 2021 with a totally different lens and say, all right, this is part of who we are and how we behave going forward. So how do we reset based upon what we learned, right? And that important, I keep saying it's time for us to get back to putting the important over the urgent. While the urgent is so, like, it's right there and we don't ignore it, right? But we need to parallel path and get back to the important, which is our mission-driven work while we're addressing the urgent. Correct?
That is absolutely correct. I think, and in many ways, this is part of what the nonprofit sector also has a lot of, I think, opportunities. And for many of us who are in the sector where we've been naming that there are some deep systemic challenges that we need to address. And so there's been a lot of urgency in the nonprofit sector, whether you're working on ecological matters or socioeconomic matters, that the way that things are going, we're not actually, going to get there in terms of getting to this inclusive, flourishing economy where people who are graduating from school, or those who are elders, or like when we think about what is the world we want to live in, so many nonprofits across New Jersey and across the planet are working against things that are multi-generational. And so there's been a sense that things need to change faster, but they're not changing. And so in many ways, I think with the pandemic, this sense of, oh, we can all get on the same page, that there's an opportunity here for us to be able to take that long-term view and say, actually, could this be an accelerant for us being able to get to the place that we've been advocating for and working tirelessly to be able to bring a level of awareness and collaboration and coordination of resources to actually address some of these long-term entrenched issues that so many of us have been working on for so long. And so I think it's one of these moments where, on one hand, yes, there's this short-term tactical crisis that's happening. That's a health crisis. There is grief, there is death, there's so many different related issues to the COVID health emergency that we're all confronted by on the daily. And at the same time, this recognition of, I think, this massive opportunity for us to actually take a deep breath and say, here are all these long-term goals that we haven't been able to actually center. And now this pandemic in many ways is offering us that opportunity to create alignment across sectors around where the breakdowns are, that we actually really don't want to go back to the normal, because that's why we've had all these nonprofits for hundreds of years and decades that have been trying to say, how do we change things? And so this is the opportunity, there's an opportunity here as well. And so I think many of us in the nonprofit sector are in this moment of immediate crisis and also seeing the long-term opportunities here to potentially profoundly change the trajectory of our human family.
Yeah, absolutely, and seize the moment, right? I mean, you couldn't have, the biggest challenges present the most awesome opportunities if you're willing to go there. And this is where we all need to kind of, muscle up and not retreat, because right? And sometimes, when the biggest challenge faces you, it's so much easier to just kind of pull the covers over your head and roll over in bed, right? It's a little more difficult to jump out of bed and get a sprain in your step and say, I'm seizing the day, right? But what we've seen through these extraordinary last 12 months is, as you said, the vulnerabilities in so many places. And we collectively as community leaders can make such a difference because of what we learned. Like we knew they were there, Alfa, right? But nobody was paying attention. Well, now the huge big spotlight has been shown on this. And now we got to get together collaboratively and collectively, and we got to go seek the resources to make these things right.
Yes, and the thing that's also been the most wonderful and surprising in the ways in which it's experienced has been that our conversations with all of our partners have become so much more honest. I have to say that being able to jump on a Zoom call, regardless of who it is, and even, I think for us, and when we were doing the work that we did before this pandemic, most of our work was in person, at events, and it takes a lot to bring cross-sector collaborators, people who don't normally get together, to be able to sit at a table and to have an honest dialogue about what's broken, what might be a new way to approach it. And the past year has been extraordinary because we can bring unlikely allies on a screen together. And by creating a safe space for conversation to say, we're all vulnerable. We all have to reimagine our models. We all have to say, whether you're a 500 person plus corporation, or you're a small business, or you're the startup entrepreneur, or you're an investor, or you're a think tank, we all have to get together as humans and say, what are you trying to get to do again? And what's broken about this? What are you doing well? And so I've seen the honesty of dialogue and a lot of the fears and barriers that used to keep us from being able to have the kinds of conversations we needed to happen on a much more accelerated track. And so that's been really exciting, and it's been fruitful. So I'm very excited about the possibilities.
Is it fair to say that Zoom, as much as it, is challenged, less zoomed out, but Zoom has actually leveled the playing field a little bit in that, think about how intimidating it could be to maybe go try to get a meeting with the CEO of a company. And then you show up at the building and you're going up to the top floor and there's the big, suite in the corner and you're like choking on your words. Well, now we're all sitting in the same Brady Bunch cube, right? So is a little bit to think about that Zoom kind of does make these, while we all think in person is so important for relationship building, there's a whole different dynamic that we should be capitalizing on in a Zoom world.
Absolutely. And our Community Business Academy graduation was a perfect example of this. You had usually our graduation events would happen with some of our university partners or our corporate partners who would give us space, because we would have hundreds of our entrepreneurs. They would bring family members, so we'd have 500 plus person events. And the energy of that occasion is always something that just feeds us and makes everyone feel very special. And we weren't sure how it would come about in a Zoom context, but I have to say it was absolutely one of the most beautiful occasions, because you had our university partner who's the president of New Jersey City University, who's sitting at her kitchen table trying to encourage all these hundreds of entrepreneurs and people, and you had our major corporate partner JP Morgan Chase and the national lead for the small businesses also sitting in his attic trying to encourage these entrepreneurs. So we're all from our attics and kitchen tables, and we're speaking words, and there is something very humbling, something that is, like you said, equalizing about the condition we find ourselves in, and that yes, we may be in different positions of authority, we may be in different socioeconomic circles, but that given the opportunity to be able to see each other in more human contexts and not necessarily in our big buildings and in these other intimidating spaces was actually quite special. And I do agree that I think it offers us an opportunity to build relationships and collaboration in really special ways that I don't think any of us had imagined was possible.
Staying on the value of discussion, you serve on quite a few task forces that are helping to advance different aspects of New Jersey's agenda, economic, workforce, et cetera. Can you tell us about the role of the task force and also how that moves forward New Jersey's agenda in terms of economic stability, sustainability, and the future workforce?
Thank you for asking that. Yes, I serve on a number of task forces. It started actually prior to the pandemic with the governor's task force on the future of work, where multiple sectors have come together to really look at the trends that we're seeing in exponential technologies and the impact of exponential technologies, both positive as well as the challenges of automation, artificial intelligence, and things that we have been actually tremendously accelerated by the pandemic, because we've seen, and we are now having, I think, an even more intense dialogue about what does this mean for the future of work? What does it mean for those who are not knowledge workers, or who are not, folks who are able to, sit on a computer and do this work, and the divides that introduces, as well as just the ways in which, we would have to reimagine how we educate our future workforce. What does workforce readiness even look like in this kind of an environment? What are some of the critical social safety nets that might be necessary in order to shore people up that are extraordinarily vulnerable? And so that work of convening and bringing together people with a level of clarity, because we are in an unprecedented, uncharted territory. Others have called it, groups like the World Economic Forum have called it the fourth industrial revolution. We are truly in the midst of a revolution, and it has gotten accelerated. I think for some of us who are working on the issue of the future of work, we were thinking that some of these exponential technologies were were really coming to life in ways that we hadn't anticipated and we're looking at a 10-year timeline of the impact of these. And then COVID has just brought this impact to the fore in a way that has accelerated the timeline significantly. And so it's not about being anti-technology. It's not about being all about, techno-utopia. It's really, again, centering humans, centering their well-being and saying, where are we trying to get to? And what does it look like for us to leverage all of these technological capacities that we have to create good, well-paying jobs that are going to provide security for most people? And then if we have data that says, there's a fair number of people, a huge percentage of people who may not be able to participate in that economy, then we have to rethink how we do that and co-design that with those who will be the most impacted. So that work is extraordinary. I'm also serving on a third sector as part of the governor's Restart and Recovery Commission for the economy. We're working on looking at, nonprofits employ quite a significant percentage, 10% of the state's employment comes from this sector. And so how we drive resilience and how we better understand where nonprofits are is a huge part of the work we're doing. Again, that's a cross-sector collaboration. And then the New Jersey Pandemic Relief Fund, which the First Lady initiated right as the pandemic began, has also been a wonderful platform to really aggregate as much philanthropic capital as we could within a short period of time. And now there are 460 plus nonprofits who have received funding. There was over $62 million that was raised. And so it's continuing to model what collaboration looks like, that we can, when we have the will and when we have leadership, we can bring together resources and we can deploy them in ways that can shore up both critical needs as well as kind of the long term. So it's been, this kind of work usually takes, so many years. And for example, with the Pandemic Relief Fund, in a matter of really a short time, when you're looking at it comparatively in a few months, we were able to get a huge collaboration of different groups to look at childcare, for instance, and say, how do we resource the long-term systemic challenges of something like the childcare sector, which we were reading headline after headline, ourselves personally experiencing it in all our homes, that the workforce behind the workforce, that is the childcare sector, was tanking, and that we needed to respond by bringing together cross-collaboration, policy leaders, et cetera, to figure out how we shore this up. And we did that in a pretty short period of time, that collaboration, and we're able to raise over $8.5 million for a 3-year pilot that is across the state in 3 areas of the state to look at different collaborative models, again, to shore up the different parts of that very important sector for our economic well-being.
Yeah, we saw early on as we were working with our businesses, and when we talk about reopening the economy, the reality was if we didn't reopen childcare, we couldn't reopen the economy. And we see the struggles day in and day out. And there was almost a missed opportunity early on. And thank you for the work that you and the group put together, because that's extraordinary. But that isn't just about, as you said, getting the economy back up and running. This is a long-term sustainability issue on how we treat, again, our most vulnerable populations, our children, our elderly, our disabled. Like we need to get our act together on these things. And it isn't just the physical tending to, it's also the structural environments that these communities find themselves in that we need to pay attention to, as well. I always say great businesses make great communities. In this regard, as you've mentioned about the, money that was raised for pandemic relief, it's extraordinary that that business is philanthropic by way of bringing dollars, but you absolutely are seeing more and more from our mission-driven companies right here in the state of New Jersey, how they're putting boots on the ground as well. Isn't that the case?
Absolutely. It's when we talk about resourcing, and this is, I think, a really critical element of collaboration and the collaborative approach. Resources are not only, financial, and the financial piece is hugely important. It's about time, it's about talent, it's about the ability to have know-how and information. And so I think there is huge partnerships that are possible and necessary. I think this is the part that is most encouraging. I think most leaders, regardless of whether in a for-profit or in the nonprofit sector or philanthropic sector, are beginning to see we need all of the different players at the table, and that we need to co-create and build trust faster than it's being torn down by the other aspects of the crises that were the multiple converging crises we're facing, that we need to rebuild trust in ways that enable us to coordinate and collaborate for the points that you made, which is that we do have our children to look after, and we need to make sure that they have oxygen as well, and we need to put oxygen masks on ourselves. We have elders, we have so many that, an economy is not just an end in itself. An economy is supposed to facilitate all the things that make life worth living. And so that, I think, is such an important part to hone in on. What are we focused on? What does it mean for us to be mission driven? And how do we take a multidimensional look at the resources required? And so I think that's the piece that excites me the most. And when we're designing and coordinating these collaborative solutions, it's so important to have the voices of those that are most impacted squarely at the table. It's very tempting to say, because we don't have the time, because, scarce financial resources, scarce talent, let's just get the best people who know, who've researched an issue, let's get them to design the solution, and then we'll go and implement it in a lean way. But the reality is, at this point, we definitely, there is no shortcut. It's like one of those, go slow to go fast. This is one of those moments. It's very tempting, given the crisis and the nature of what we're seeing, to say, I just need to go fast. And I just, need to, and there's a wonderful African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that together piece is not as easy as it seems. I'm pretty sure everybody here would acknowledge that. And because it requires us to slow down and to see each other and to make sure we're creating spaces for those that we're trying to solve for to be at the table, to express to us in their own words, in their own experiences, what they're seeing. And then we can bring our experiences, but that shared mutual visibility is critical for us to build trust. Because we can build a fast solution that won't go anywhere. And the world is piled full of solutions that nobody's touching. And we're like, why? And so, it's learning to pull back, to reflect, and create spaces for mutual visibility and understanding.
If we look back, we should recall that COVID actually gives us that opportunity, because in this world, we always said, if the world would just stop, if the whole world would stop for 5 minutes, I'm gonna work on this, right? But we always say, oh, there's no time, so the world will never stop. Well, the world stopped, and we're still in a heavy pause mode. And so this idea of taking our time to get it right for more long-term sustainability is significant. We have to put that lens on what we do. Alfa, we're in the block and tackle every day, I call it, right? We wake up every day, we look at the numbers, and we react to it. This goes back again to, how do we continue to get our focus on the long-term strategic impact of this? And I want to bring back to, you talked about, the Industrial Revolution. NJBIA, we're 111 years old. So we were here at the first in an industrializing Trenton, representing manufacturing, if you can picture that world, right? And I think, through all that time, workforce development was so important to us. And, not just building and ensuring there were new jobs to be had, but that we had a pipeline to fill those jobs, right? So in this new industrial revolution, which I couldn't agree more, because it's so real, right? We have to accept this. Entrepreneurship plays a significant role in this. And in between that also, how do we help to reshape and reskill? What do we need to be focusing on, and how can the nonprofits play a role in that, in building our next generation worker?
This is something that I'm extraordinarily passionate about, as you know.
Us too.
Yes. And I'm very grateful for the great thinking and the research that you're doing. And I really appreciate the white papers that you're putting out on the future of work by sector, because that, I think what's different about this industrial revolution as opposed to the last, there's a lot, but one of the key elements is we actually have more data and more information than ever before. Our capacity to make meaning of it is where there's challenges, and the simple reason, the volume of data that we have is also beyond our capacity, our human capacity really to digest. But the one thing that we do really well as humans and we need to do is to tell stories. We have, stories are such a powerful both opportunity for creating alignment, for creating meaning, and for us to actually create shared meaning, which is critical. And so I would say that the data revolution that's happened and what it's telling us about, entrepreneurship and the role of, even as you mentioned, nonprofits, I look at it and I say, when we're talking about it from a perspective of creating a world in which humans, who I believe are inherently creative, and some of them want to express that creativity by being an entrepreneur. Some of them want to express that creativity by joining a great enterprise, a great mission, a great purpose, and being able to contribute their individual capacities and core competencies. And the key moment that I feel that we're in is we need to understand what the role of entrepreneurs and small businesses, big businesses, and the nonprofit sectors. All of us, when you look at it, where you have work, you have a job, I have work, I have a job. And a big part of the reason why my work is a job is because there's an organization that I co-founded that has a mission and that has a job description and so on. So all jobs come from enterprises, from nonprofits, but really some kind of an initiative that's saying we're going to structure roles for individual humans to come and contribute their particular gifts. That is the role of all these institutions, is to structure jobs. And I think a lot of times we've kind of looked at it as, hey, the role of any institution, any organization is to create value. And so I think we're in this moment where we're needing to grapple with what is the relationship of value creation to good, well-meaning jobs and paths for individuals to express their creativity and purpose. How do we bring that Venn diagram closer together? So the solutioning that we're doing, the creativity and innovation that we're bringing is not at the expense of saying, how do we eliminate the humans so we can have a more efficient model and then we can actually have higher profitability? Yes, but what is the purpose of money? What is the purpose of that profitability? Is it so that it can go create more jobs, so it can create more structured opportunities for people to express their creativity and their core competence? I believe we need to arrive at a shared story where we say, yeah, I think that we will all benefit more when more humans are employed or are in a state of ownership and shared ownership, where they're in alliance with the entrepreneurs and the businesses, that labor is not on one side of the table and businesses on the other, but that there's a shared destiny here. And I have a really good friend and partner who's replicating our model in Chicago, who actually started doing it because he said the absence of work equals the presence of violence. Yeah. And just like recognizing that when we have large sectors of our society unemployed, what ends up on the other side is violence. And then we're needing to address that in ways and mechanisms that perpetuate injustices, that make us party to the kind of society we don't really want to be a part of. And most of the future generations, and when you talk to young people, they don't want to be a part of that either. And so being proactive and being able to look at the data to say, hey, this is what the trends are telling us. And it's not just the future of work, we're getting the same kind of data about the ecology. So we have about a 40-year timeline, if not less, around where our ecological crisis is bringing us. And it has, similar to that absence of work equals the presence of violence, the absence of fresh water, the absence of clean air, the absence of ecologically sustainable ways for us to add value and produce value equals calamity, equals mass migrations of humans, equals stressors on socioeconomics that are already fragile. And so it's us integrating those trends, that data, the wonderful reports you're bringing in, our shared experiences to say, hey, we're in the greatest migration. And unlike other times, we have information. We're beginning to understand our own biology, our own psychology, how our brain responds to stressors, anxiety, and fear. So let's use that information and data. Let's actually get in the same story. And let's begin to create the kinds of companies and invest the dollars that may be floating around, invested in the kinds of things that are not connected to the realities of Main Street, the realities of what nonprofits are created to do to address these externalities that no one is really wanting to take up, that business may not want to take onto its balance sheet or government may not be in a position to address. Let's create the financial resourcing, know-how, and talent to actually build the kind of future we all want to live in. And so we're in that greatest migration moment, and I'm extraordinarily passionate about it because I have two sons. I have a 5 and an 8-year-old, and they need to have roles that are ready and that they could actually express their creativity in. And we need that for all the children in New Jersey.
Oh,
And
no,
I think,
it's everything we do,
for
right?
all of the children in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is about, leaving the world a little bit better for the next generation. And that is in the sustainability patterns of, better socioeconomic, better environment, better jobs, better economy. It's that whole three-legged stool that we need to work on. And we have just about 4 minutes left, and we have a question from the audience. So what advice do you have for nonprofits as they're trying to open doors to for-profits? During this time, you can't just catch someone at an event and try to get a second of their time to introduce yourself. Do you have any tips?
So this is a question about how to get for-profits to engage.
Yeah, because we're not out and you're not introduced to someone. You say, hey, let's follow up. You actually, how do you get in the door now? Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's challenging. I will say that I have been very much about looking at the relationships that you had before and building on those. And that's if you've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of people in person, it's a lot easier to follow up and say, let's jump on a Zoom call. If 15 minutes, 30 minutes, I want to talk to you about challenges that we're having or opportunities that we're seeing, or just how are you seeing the world? And are you open to collaboration? I think by and large, I have not, that people may be very busy. And I will say that, even as a nonprofit leader, we're all overstretched. And in many ways, I think the Zoom, culture has kind of shown us just like how much time we have. There's only so many essentially Zoom hours available to you to accomplish, whatever is on your agenda. But I think being persistent and sending an email, more emails to say, this isn't just about me pitching you something that I'm trying to do. I'm really trying to understand where you are, and me understanding where you are will help me in better designing what I'm trying to do. And there might be opportunities that I could also bring to the table. And so really asking yourself too, like, why do you want to partner with some of these groups? I think you also have to be very selective in who you want to partner with and who's willing to be in relationship of mutuality and trust with you. And sometimes if they're not in that mindset, it's not worth it. And it's okay. It's okay.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Right. I mean, it has to be, every relationship requires two sides, if not more. Bless you. And so the whole idea of mutuality of opportunity is significant, and working your network, right? Who in your network can introduce you to someone else? This is what we do all the time. I mean, the one thing I'm so proud about, NJBIA, we connect people with each other every day. So take us up on the ability to be a connector for you. But this goes to, and this will be my last question, we'll round out with this because I think this tells, really encapsulates who you are as a person, right? You have a mantra of don't settle for no. I think we heard a lot about how you exercise that in your daily perseverance, persistence, and ability to get things done. But can you explain for us in your mind what that means when you say don't settle for now?
Yeah, I will even say, for the big things, and we started at the beginning with this, which is, anxiety and the feeling that you may want to pull back or, and so just really kind of listening and always keeping, for me, what that means is always keeping my line around my purpose, why I think I'm on this planet, very clearly in front of me, because sometimes that no is not just coming from the outside, and it's not just about rejection from the outside that I'm, navigating. It's also internal. And I think that internal piece is the most significant. So if you're hearing yourself inside saying no or shrinking away, take the moment to create the space to say why. Is it because this is fear? Is it a fear of failure, or fear of rejection, or fear of judgment, or fear of abandonment? Or is it something that just is not right about what's in front of you, or the step that you should take, or your own, overextension of your core capacity? And so I think that inward journey is more important than ever before. And then once you're clear on the inner journey piece, and you get right your yes, and you get right your no, then it becomes about, is it about time? If it's especially in the external conversations that you're having, where are they? Who are you trying to get a yes from? And in the biggest sense, and this is where I'll end, which is when you hear about the trends and when you look at the data, and especially some of the hardest things we're grappling with as a nation, issues of inclusion and anti-racism, for example, that produces a lot of feelings of wanting to shirk away or to say no. But if that commitment, whether it's because of your children or some other motivating factor that's internally there for you, it's saying, I will keep showing up because someday the yes will come. It may not be on my timeline, but my commitment and my father-in-law, who actually is a co-founder at Rising Tide Capital and is the founding board chair, had said to myself and Alex when we're starting Rising Tide, you're getting on a mission that's multi-generational, and you may be trying to nourish riverbanks you may never get to see. That was one of the most profound advice that I got, and I'm very grateful for it. And so we may not get to our yes in a timeline that we're seeing, but that yes may be coming from that right action, right relationship, and right intention every moment.
That's extremely optimistic and gives us a lot to be excited about and look forward. And to your point, we can't be our own best leaders if we can't be our own best selves. So we need to empower ourselves so we can be the best to all of those who are around us. Alfa, thank you so much for being an extraordinary community leader, for joining us today. Keep inspiring, and keep helping the communities that you truly are having impact now and for generations to come.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and what you do and your team. Thank you for having this time for all of us. Really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks.